Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and we continue with part 7 of my Takashi Miike filmography review. Now, during my last video I covered a number of films that involve Yakuza. Tonight we've got a cornucopia of weirdness to get through. The sheer variety in the films that we're covering in this video is impressive, so remember, all of the movies that I discuss will be listed in the description box below. So let's get cracking here. We start off with one that's actually quite normal, and that is Negotiator from 2003. This is a drama mystery. Japanese police headquarters has introduced a negotiator system to deal with hostage situations in Japan. Two negotiators, Shuhei and Maiko, had once been partners until people suspected that they were having an affair. Maiko was removed from her position, and the powerhouse duo was split up. However, a hostage crisis arises involving Shuhei's wife and child, which drives him to ask Maiko to work with him once again as a negotiator on a case that he is too involved in emotionally to do on his own. Now, just to be clear, this is not a remake of the Kevin Spacey Samuel L. Jackson film from 1998. It's very different, actually. This is a well-written mystery that also has some interesting hostage negotiations and psychology that I've never really heard of before in a movie. For example, the negotiator uses psychology to figure out exactly how many hostages should be requested for release at specific points in time. They also kind of calculate, so to speak, exactly how much money to offer as compensation, and they offer their explanations as to why they're doing this. So that was pretty interesting stuff. Cops are pretty smart and fairly sharp in this, and I appreciated that. There's not a lot of dumb cop moments in this, so that's good. The storytelling structure is nuanced and makes the viewer think about the criminals and their end goals. It gives you some clues, but does not tell you the whole story until the final third, which helps you to stay interested and intrigued as to what's going on. You definitely need to pay attention, though, while watching this one. Direction is very good. The lead actor is the same guy from Premonition. I think his performance in Negotiator was even better than in Premonition, personally. There are also some appearances by a few Miike regulars, which I'll let you discover for yourself. Now, one important thing to know is that this is more of a low-key hostage film, okay? In fact, I think it's a bit too low-key for its own good at times. Like, the opening half, I would say, moves briskly enough, but pacing is really slow, like just glacial during the second half of this movie, almost to the point of being a little bit frustrating. To be fair, it does a good job of slowly revealing its secrets, but some viewers may be frustrated at the complete lack of suspense or action during much of the second half of this film. So unlike a lot of films like this, which might have a slow build-up and then they explode into an action scene or suspense, this is almost like the opposite. You start off with a little bit more suspense and intrigue, and then as the mystery's developed, you ramp down into like a drama. So, just to let you know that before going in. Now, The Negotiator, in terms of availability, is widely available on DVD, and that availability situation will be very common for this evening. We're very lucky in terms of the movies that we're covering tonight. All of them are basically widely available. Now, our next film that we're covering here is one that most people know about, and that is One Missed Call, again from 2003. This is a horror film. Now, I already reviewed this film in my Asian Horror Year in Review playlist from 1999, but I'll summarize my review here as well for your convenience. Now, the DVD plot synopsis is as follows. When a group of teens start receiving a one missed call display on their cell phone screens, they hear terrifying voice messages documenting their very own anguished death throes. Now, the idea of receiving a voice message from yourself as you die is a creepy premise. Of course, there was an Asian horror film from 1 year earlier, 2002, that showcased phone use as a horror element, and that was Phone from South Korea. Now, I think Phone is a stronger film overall, but One Missed Call is certainly entertaining. Now, I do think that this is a somewhat derivative opening and general premise, but it gets better and more entertaining as it moves along. Second half is jam-packed with horror sequences and a few crazy death scenes. The best of which is what I refer to as the bottle cap decapitation. It just reminded me of a bottle cap. I don't know. You're opening a bottle cap, I should say. That one is memorable not only for the death itself, but also where the death occurs. That's the moment in the film that just locked me in for the rest of the runtime. You know what I mean? Now, the lead actress here is Ko Shibazaki, who played the psycho chick in the film Battle Royale, and she has had a long, steady career to the present day, so it's nice to see that. And just to beat a dead horse, I think we all know by now, One Missed Call was not Miike's first mainstream commercial film. We covered Andromeda in 1998, and White Collar Worker Kentaro from 1999, among some other titles. But people still like to make that claim for some reason, even though it's objectively false. So please, stop doing that. Another odd claim regarding One Missed Call is that Miike created it as a satire of mainstream Japanese horror films. I've never been able to find an actual interview where Miike said that this was his intent, so this claim may represent like a subjective interpretation of the film for some viewers, which is fine. I do have a sneaking suspicion, however, that this claim was a knee-jerk reaction by some Miike fans that was intended to counter the factually incorrect claim that One Missed Call was Miike's first mainstream film. So I remember message board conversations going something like this in the mid-2000s. One person would say, "Oh man, Miike totally sold out by making this commercial film. In the past, he only made weirdo movies that were passion projects." And then one of Miike's fans would be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. The only reason Miike did this film was so he could lampoon the J-horror film industry." You know what I mean? So it kind of went like that. So you basically had one kind of nonsensical claim that set off a series of debates on the internet that basically gave everyone the wrong impression regarding this director's filmography. Now, I've seen this film probably half a dozen times. My personal opinion is that Miike played it straight here. It's simply an entertaining film with some familiar, quirky elements to it. I don't really see it as a satire, so to speak. But, and another important thing. Do not get this confused. If you have not seen this movie and you're seeking it out, do not get it confused with the American remake of the same name, which was released in 2008 and really stunk. The remake of One Missed Call was pretty bad, which is the case for most American remakes of Japanese horror films. But, just letting you know, get the one from 2003, not the one from 2008. Now, the availability of One Missed Call, as expectedly, it is widely available. Ironically, there's a trilogy box set, which I just bought, I think, last year, and I showcased on my DVD collection videos, which everyone should be watching, by the way. And, I showcased that for you there, and the trilogy box set is actually more available now than the individual movies at times, depending on where you look. So I say if you're interested in these films, just get the trilogy box set. I personally enjoyed all three films in the Japanese trilogy. So, it's worth the investment, and you can get it pretty cheap. And of course, I already covered all three of those in my Asian horror playlist, so check out that playlist if you want my thoughts on the other two. Alright, our next film tonight is one that we're getting a little quirky now. We're getting a little quirky. Miike goes into a superhero genre here, subgenre. And I am talking, of course, about Zebraman from 2004. This is a genre bender. You got drama, you got comedy, you got horror, and you got action mixed in here. So, a failure as a third-grade teacher and a family man, Shinichi Ichikawa lives with his cheating wife, his teenage daughter who dates older men, and his son who is bullied because of his father's presence at the school. Escaping from everyday life, Shinichi secretly dresses up nightly as Zebraman, the title character from an unpopular 1970s tokusatsu TV series he watched as a child before it was canceled after the 7th episode. Now, as a result of meeting a wheelchair-using transfer student, also a fan of Zebraman, Shinichi not only regains his love for teaching, but also develops feelings for the boy's mother. At the same time, a rash of strange crimes and murders have been occurring around the school at which he teaches. Confronting criminals who are possessed by a strange, slime-based alien force, Shinichi tries to save the day. So the villains here are monster aliens made of green goo, who seep into the bodies of humans and make them do horrifying things like murder. There's definitely a horror element at play related to that, which I enjoyed. Sho Aikawa is our lead actor. He previously worked on, with Miike on Gozu, the Dead or Alive trilogy, and other films. He's perfectly cast as Zebraman here because he has a very likable, fragile, clumsy presence that's actually very consistent with the quirky tone of the movie. And that's really what Miike relies on to make this movie fun. Quirkiness. For example, the cops and scientists keep a sample of the green goo at an abandoned elementary school. Then a group of elementary school children hijack a bus and go on a crime spree because they've gotten infected with the green stuff. Near the beginning, there's a fight scene involving an Onryo ghost. So that's the kind of nutty stuff that's featured here, and it really sets this movie apart from, American superhero movies. They usually don't get this nutty. However, there are some flaws that limit this movie's entertainment value, I think. First of all, it does have some pacing issues. The runtime's almost 2 full hours. I think it's just too long, especially given the fact that there is limited use of action set pieces. Also, the CGI is very cheap and does kind of take you out of the moment sometimes because it looks like an old video game cutscene from like the late 90s or something. But still, this is worth a watch if you want to check out one of the more family-friendly films from Miike's filmography. Viewer beware that this is intentionally cheesy in spots as well. So Zebraman is widely available on DVD. I'm telling you, it's a theme, widely available. All right, so now we're gonna get weirder. It's gonna get weirder, as I promised. And we have to cover this one. This one is one of my favorite Miike films, actually, and that is Box from the Three Extremes anthology. This was released in 2004, and this is a horror film. Now, I already reviewed this film, again, in my Asian Horror Year in Review playlist from 2004, but I'll summarize my review here as well for your convenience again. So this is an anthology of 3 short horror films, one from Hong Kong, one from South Korea, and one from Japan. Each of them lasts about 40 minutes each. So Miike's film here is a 40-minute film. Now, the Hong Kong entry is called Dumplings, and the South Korean entry is called Cut. So again, check out my Asian Horror playlist video from 2004. I think that might be in part 4 of that one, 3 or 4 of that one, for my thoughts on those other entries. Now, the Japanese story, entitled Box, was of course directed by Miike, so that will be my focus in this video. And it is my favorite story within this anthology. Focuses on the recurring dreams of a woman whose twin sister died when she was young. Now, this is very dreamy and surreal stuff here. Lots of snowy, icy environments to enjoy. I love watching this film in the wintertime. It does an excellent job of capturing the mood of that particular season. When I previously covered Three Extremes 2 in my Asian horror video from 2002, I talked about the short film Memories and said that it was driven by its strong visuals. Now, the same can be said for Box, but I think Box has a bit more in terms of intriguing character interaction. The way the story is structured makes the viewer want to know what is happening and what is going to happen. The flashbacks take place in a small traveling circus environment, which immediately piques interest due to its bizarreness. There are some uncomfortable moments here, but I would describe this more as a beautiful, intriguing horror film than something that's like, mean-spirited or exploitative. The ending is very memorable, I think, too. Just the final shot is memorable. I really like this one and would consider it to be a high-priority title to seek out. It's October now. We're in the Halloween season. Box is a good one to add to your list for this month. It's very atmospheric, and I would say, some people can compare it to a David Lynch film. It's got that weird vibe to it, you know what I mean? Really interesting stuff. Now, Box, which is, of course, included in the Three Extremes anthology, widely available on DVD. Just check all these out. Well, I can't say that, because we got one coming up that I do not recommend. I take that statement back wholeheartedly. Earlier in this playlist, I mentioned that the first Miike film I ever saw was so terrible that it put me off this director for a little while. Well, it's finally time to review that film. And after watching it 3 times over a 10-year period, I still consider it to be one of his worst. And that is Izo from 2004. Again, a genre bender. It's kind of a drama, action, horror film. Now, in life, Izo was a ruthless samurai who was trained as a soldier by a powerful Japanese warlord. But after earning the moniker Izo the Slaughterer, he was executed for his notorious bloodlust, and his spirit now roams between heaven and hell. Whiling away eternity with his trusty weapon in tow, this swordsman seeks his vengeance the only way he knows how, by killing every human he encounters. And fortunately for him, he transcends time in the afterlife, which means that he can transport himself into the past or present at will. This allows him to tangle against all kinds of historical and contemporary characters, real or fake. I'm talking SWAT teams and vampires, people. SWAT teams and vampires. Now, if I had somehow missed this film back in the day, and someone today had informed me that Miike made a film with this plot synopsis, I would just lose my mind and be totally stoked for it. If the action were good and the premise fulfilled its potential to contribute some thought-provoking encounters, this could have been one of Miike's best. Unfortunately, that's not the case in my opinion. Not even close. So, what about the action? Let's start there. There are a lot of showdowns here, duels and death scenes, but all of them are over in a few seconds, and all of them are basically the same thing. This dude just walks up and just slashes people with his sword. It's just really monotonous stuff. Remember that SWAT team fight I mentioned? Well, it's one of the most disappointing sequences in this director's entire filmography, if only because it's completely forgettable. That scene should not be forgettable. How do you take that moment and do nothing with it? You know what I mean? It's not good. All in all, there's not much to enjoy from an action standpoint in this film. But wait, let's hold on a second. I have read online that this really is not an action movie, which is kind of surprising given the large quantity of action on display. So this is a non-action movie with a bunch of action in it, but some people think that the quality of the action within it should not be criticized. Not sure I agree with that, but let's move on. So, okay, let's go to the story. There is almost no story in this movie at all. The demon dude gets magically transported to a different time and place every few minutes, then kills someone we as viewers don't even know. Repeat this dozens of times over 128 minutes, and you end up with this thing called Izo. Now, I kid you not, Izo becomes completely pointless and lacking in any entertainment value by like the 40-minute mark. It's so repetitious, you want to pull your hair out while watching it. But, hold on a second, because I think repetition is one of the philosophical themes of this film. Yeah, this film is apparently a philosophical movie. I once read a post on IMDb where someone convincingly argued that Troll 2 was a feminist masterpiece. I'm not joking. You can extract philosophical content out of anything. The relevant question is this: does Izo explore those themes in interesting ways? No, I don't think so. Most of the content in Izo could probably be extracted from the plot synopsis alone. You don't really get much more out of actually watching the film, from a philosophical standpoint. Oh, and in case you were wondering, there's no character development in this movie at all either. Now, another thing I would like to point out is that the dialogue gets pretty bad at times as well. I'm all for sleazy moments in movies, as we've seen in this playlist, or in my Asian horror playlist. But there were a few conversations early on that were so forced in their sexually explicit nature that they just came off as lame attempts at being, like, edgy or something. One positive thing I noticed, though, is that there were a lot of recognizable actors who made cameos, so it's kind of fun spotting them. But in the end, man, I really disliked Izo, and I find it to be hopelessly obnoxious as a film. You know, I've read a lot of like online analyses and stuff. Even Tom Mess, in the book I always recommend, Agitator, the Cinema of Takashi Miike, he has a whole chapter. No, was Izo in there? It was either there or online. I read an article from him, and it just was not convincing. It was not convincing. But if you're willing to check it out, because it is a weird movie, you know, I think most people actually dislike this one, but it does have a small fan base, loyal fan base to it. And it is widely available on DVD. I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I always go back to the premise. Like, 5 years from now, I'll read that premise again, and I'll be like, maybe I should try it again. The premise is just so amazing. But if I know better, I won't do it. Now, the following title here that we're covering tonight is not a theatrical film. It's a recording of a stage play that was performed in front of a live audience. So Miike directed a stage play. This one's called Demon Pond. Now, this recording of a stage play captures the popular play of the same name that Takashi Miike staged and directed for sold-out audiences in Japan. It's basically about humans and their relationship with the environment, as told through the legend that states that a human must ring the bell at Demon Pond at required intervals, lest the entire valley be submerged in supernatural floods. Now, I previously covered Masahiro Shinoda's movie, Demon Pond, from 1979 in my Asian horror playlist. That was a cool flick. And Miike brings the same kind of charm to this live version. But this is far less creepy, I'll tell you that much. So this is dialogue-driven, obviously, but it's well-written and impressive performances. You get some impressive performances from some popular movie actors. Kenichi Endo is here, and you will recognize him because he's been in over 200 Japanese films. Ryohei Matsuda is here as well. He played the lead in the Nightmare Detective films. So it's nice to see some recognizable faces in this, and they acquit themselves well when one considers that, you know, the format here is quite different from shooting a film, and they all, you know, came out looking good, so that's good. One thing I noticed is that the stage itself seemed quite large, but the special effects are practically non-existent. You don't really get any crazy lighting or fog or anything like that. But with that said, this is more interesting than you might think based on the synopsis. As a mythical story with otherworldly characters that are set to the backdrop of a legend, it also infuses some funny dialogue that's peppered throughout, give the characters some color. So yeah, you know, I mean, there's really not a whole lot more to say about this, but I do recommend it if you're in the mood for like a stage play, you know what I mean? And I don't know, what else is there more to say about it? It's kind of hard to describe why it works for me, but I don't know, I think it's probably just the dialogue and the performances. And let's take a moment to point out the obvious again. The sheer variety in this director's filmography is ridiculous. So, yeah, I do recommend Demon Pond. Not a high priority item, I don't think. But check it out. Widely available. Unbelievably on DVD. Alright, our next film this evening is a children's fantasy adventure film. That is quite a bit of fun. Quite a bit of fun. And that is The Great Yokai War from 2005. Now, Wikipedia provides a very nice plot synopsis. A young boy named Tadashi moves to a small town after his parents' divorce. At a local festival, he is chosen to be that year's Kirin Rider, a protector of all things good. He soon discovers that his new title is quite literal, as a nefarious spirit named Kato appears. Now, Kato, a demon whose mystical powers are born of his rage at the annihilation of Japan's local tribes, desires vengeance against the modern Japanese for their actions against the yokai. To carry out his revenge, Kato allies himself with a yokai named Aji, summoning a fiery spirit called Yomotsumono, a creature composed of the resentment carried by the multitudinous things mankind has discarded. Kato feeds yokai into Yomotsumono's flames, fusing them with the numerous discarded tools and items to form Kikai monsters. Now, these Kikai, under Kato's control, capture other yokai to build their numbers while killing humans. Did you get all that? Now, we've talked about yokai before on this channel. In my Asian horror playlist, I first covered them while reviewing the ghost story of the Seven Wonders of Hansho back in 1957, and then I discussed a few specific types when discussing the yokai monsters films from the late 1960s. There's really no proper English word that is 100% accurate for describing yokai. You could say that they're kind of a mix of Japanese spirits, goblins, and monsters. They're simply yokai, you know. And you get to see a ton of yokai in this Miike film. If you're at all familiar with yokai folklore, it's a lot of fun when you recognize specific ones. And the makeup effects in this are really good, actually, which helps to bring all of these yokai to life. There are also some CGI effects, but they work better than something like Zebraman, I think, because they're not as distracting, and that's probably because this is more of a fantasy film, so those effects look more at home here. As one might expect from Miike, this is a weird, unconventional film. The characters are off the wall and highly imaginative as he pushes the limits of the family fantasy genre. There are definitely some dark, horror-based moments, as well as some scantily clad women that give it a slight edge. Chiaki Kuriyama is actually quite delicious in this one, sporting a white beehive hairdo and an extremely short skirt. Seiko Iwaido is quite the looker here as well. She plays Kawahime, the river princess. So if this movie came out when I was a kid, I definitely would have developed a huge crush on some of these weird lady characters. And also, this has the yokai that I always find oddly attractive. The girl who's usually wears like a kimono and her neck stretches out and her head floats around the room. She's one of my favorites as well. Oh, I don't wonder if the hopping umbrellas in this, there's a bunch in here, trust me. Now, the Great Yokai War employs a charming kind of weirdness that is actually quite funny at times. Look out for the incessant abuse of a cute little yokai furball animal. Yeah, I laughed hysterically during that brief beatdown. That was pretty hilarious. Completely ridiculous stuff. But this film is so creative and enjoyably twisted that it provides a very memorable experience. One final note is that our young lead actor here is Ryonosuke Kamiki, who is a pretty big name nowadays. He was in Bakuman, As the Gods Will, and the last two Rurouni Kenshin films. So if you're a fan of him now, it's really neat to see him as a little kid in the Great Yokai War. Now, this is probably my favorite film from Miike that involves little kids as the lead protagonists, so definitely check this one out. It's pretty cool. And the Great Yokai War is widely available on DVD. Alright, we got one more tonight, and guess what? It's pretty weird. It's a science fiction murder mystery. Yeah, we're covering everything tonight. And that is Big Bang Love, Juvenile A, 2006, a drama thriller. Now, in an unknown future, Jun confesses to the murder of another man, Shiro, at a detention facility. Now, the story follows two detectives trying to uncover the case through interviews and testimonies by the inmates and the prison employees. It also shows events in the lives of these men. Jun, who is incarcerated for the murder of his rapist, forms an intensely close bond with Shiro, who is in prison for the murder and rape of a woman. Now, Shiro protects Jun with fanatical intensity and violence from the other men, though his intentions are not clear. So the highly symbolic visuals and dialogue in this film contrast with the routine nature of the police investigation, creating a somewhat surreal commentary on the nature of violence and salvation throughout the film. This is a very odd film in a number of ways. For example, some of the interior set designs in the prison are like nothing you'd ever see in an actual prison. I think we ran into this in the film The Guys from Paradise, wasn't it? Where the prison was just totally not like an actual prison. The same is here, but it's more of a sci-fi type theme. In some cases, they seem to portray a stage play at times with only a small area being shown under a single set of lights, while the rest of the area in the room is pitch black, and this is in the prison, so it's kind of odd. There's also a pyramid-like structure and a rocket ship, both of which lie right outside of the prison itself, which also adds to like the weird sci-fi nature to this. Much of this is shot with red or orange lighting as well. Very unorthodox setting for sure. Another odd thing is that the structure is different from a typical crime film because the question and answer sessions consist of written inquiry followed by verbal monologue by the person being interviewed. So I found it to be creative and engaging in order to portray the investigation in that way. So that gives it a little bit of a twist. But if you're worried that this will be too weird for you, I'd like to point out that this film is very easy to follow. It's very linear in its storytelling, and it basically explains everything very neatly by the end of the film. So you don't have to worry about being confused that much. Character development and motivation are strongly developed. Script writing is efficient and pretty interesting. Two lead actors here are Ryohei Matsuda and Masanobu Ando, the latter of which you will recognize as the crazy dude with orange hair in Battle Royale. With regard to Matsuda, I previously mentioned that he was the lead in the Nightmare Detective films, but he also appeared in Rampo Noir and Blue Spring. Both actors are very good in this movie. And also Renji Ishibashi is also impressive as the creepy prison warden. So Big Bang Love Juvenile A is a very different kind of film, but it's also very impressive. Very impressive stuff. I definitely recommend this. And it is, of course, widely available on DVD. Alright. So I guess that wraps up part 7 of my Takashi Miike filmography review. Huge variety of films in terms of must-see movies, too. I mean, I would say that Box from 3 Extremes is a must-watch, along with The Great Yokai War and Big Bang Love Juvenile A. And you could probably even toss in One Missed Call as well, because it was a very popular film that was released in the thick of the J-horror boom that popularized the genre to international audiences during the early 2000s. There's a lot to check out here. And be sure to join me for part 8 of this playlist, because we're going to begin our journey through the phase in Miike's career that a lot of people tend to ignore. But as we will see, he continued to make some impressive films during this time period. So, as always, we will see you next time.